The officiant, a portly man with a practiced smile, turned to the bride, Amelia Hsu. "Amelia, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Before Amelia could answer, two male voices cut through the expectant silence. "We object." All heads turned. Standing at the entrance of the opulent banquet hall were two men, both strikingly handsome, but in different ways. One, with a sharp jawline and intense eyes, was Ethan Liu. The other, with a softer, more boyish charm, was Noah Sunday. They were Amelia's childhood friends, her brothers from another mother, as she'd always described them. For a split second, the assembled guests, dressed in their finest attire, seemed to think this was some elaborate, pre-planned prank, a bit of wedding day theater. But that illusion shattered when Amelia, with a sudden, almost feral energy, kicked off her impossibly high heels and, gathering the voluminous skirts of her designer gown, ran towards the two men. The three embraced, a tangle of white lace, tailored suits, and stunned silence. Gasps rippled through the room. This was no prank. This was a scandal. Ethan, his arm possessively around Amelia's waist, looked directly at me, the abandoned groom, James Chun. His voice, though calm, held a distinct edge of challenge. "Noah and I have something to say to Amelia. It'll just take a moment. You don't mind, do you, James?" He emphasized my name with a subtle sneer. Every eye in the room was on me, burning with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. I felt the heat of 1,000 stares, but my face remained a mask. 8 years. 8 years I had loved Amelia, catered to her every whim, endured her casual cruelties, and for what? This. I took the microphone from the officiant, who looked like he was about to faint. "The stage is yours," I announced, my voice remarkably steady. "Today's wedding celebration is for these three newlyweds. Let's wish them all the happiness in the world." The irony was thick enough to choke on. I handed the microphone back, the clatter echoing in the sudden hush. Then, with a deliberate slowness, I slipped the diamond ring from my finger, the ring that had cost a small fortune, the ring that was supposed to symbolize our future, and let it fall to the polished floor. It bounced once, twice, then lay still, glittering mockingly. I turned and walked away. As if the script was written, the DJ cut the song, "Marry You Today," and instead a pop song filled the space. The wind whispers, telling me you love me so. Waking from a cradle dream, your youthful smile I know. I moved with purpose past the bewildered faces. I paused at the head table, near where Ethan and Noah stood. They were still frozen, seemingly unsure of how to proceed. With a theatrical flourish, I took off my bespoke suit jacket and draped it over Ethan's shoulders. Then, I unpinned my boutonniere, a delicate arrangement of white roses, and fastened it to Noah's crisp shirt. "You two might need these," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I pushed them gently towards the stage, towards Amelia, who stood there, a picture of bewildered betrayal. I saw the MC frozen with the microphone hanging limply in his hand. I bent, picked up the microphone that he dropped, and began to speak, my voice calm, almost conversational, as if I were telling a story to a group of friends. "There was an online debate I saw recently." I began, my voice amplified throughout the hall. It was about whether love can truly blossom over time. And what happens if, after all that time, it doesn't? I paused, letting the question hang in the air. Some people online said it just needs more time. Others said, if a year isn't enough, try another. If 2 years aren't enough, keep going. But what if you spend a lifetime trying, and it still doesn't work? What then? I looked directly at Amelia, at the two men flanking her. I think I have the answer now. It's not about time. It's about whether one person's heart is already occupied by someone else. Or, in this case, I added, my voice hardening, by two someone else's. So, again, I wish these three all the best. A long and happy life together. I dropped the microphone with a resounding thud, the sound echoing the finality of my words. As I passed a large, ornate trash bin, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, nestled on a bed of satin, was the engagement ring, the one I'd given Amelia when I proposed, the one she'd worn with such pride. I tossed it into the bin, the sound of metal hitting metal a sharp, decisive punctuation mark. It was only then, as I reached the exit, that Amelia seemed to snap out of her daze. I heard the frantic patter of bare feet on the marble floor behind me. "James," she cried, her voice ragged. I kept walking, heading out into the bright afternoon sunlight, towards the busy street. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of her bare feet hitting the ground drew closer. Soon, her delicate hand gripped my wrist. I wrenched my arm free, turning to face her. What? Go get married to them. Don't let me keep you from your happily ever after. Her face was flushed, her eyes wild. You're being so petty, James. You know I was just trying to lighten the mood. Ethan and Noah are my childhood friends, my brothers. There's nothing between us. It was the same old song and dance. The casual dismissal, the shifting of blame. She was always so quick to make me feel like I was the one in the wrong, the one overreacting. I was speechless. My silence, however, only fueled her. I finally agreed to marry you after you chased me for 8 years, she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. And now you've ruined everything. You've humiliated me in front of everyone. You need to come back inside, apologize to the guests, and explain that it was all a joke, that you were being overly sensitive. Why? I interrupted, my voice dangerously low. Why should I take the blame for your actions? I made myself perfectly clear. This wedding is my gift to you three. We never got legally married, as you insisted. So consider the groom's position officially vacant. I'm done. We're done. Just then, Ethan and Noah came rushing out, their faces a mixture of concern and apprehension. Ethan immediately went to Amelia, wrapping her in a comforting embrace. Noah, meanwhile, was carrying Amelia's discarded heels. He knelt before her, gently taking her bare foot in his hand. He slipped the shoe onto her foot with a tenderness that made my stomach churn. You shouldn't run around barefoot, he chided softly. You could hurt yourself. Such beautiful feet. The scene was a tableau of intimacy, a clear demonstration of the bond between these three, a bond that excluded me. My heart felt like a block of ice in my chest. Without a word, I hailed a passing taxi and climbed inside. As the car pulled away, I glanced back through the rear window. Ethan and Noah were escorting Amelia back into the banquet hall, their arms around her, supporting her, comforting her. A wave of nausea washed over me. Just then, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a live stream alert. Curiosity overriding my disgust, I tapped on it. My eyes widened. The live stream was from inside the wedding venue. The account was private, obviously belonging to one of the guests. The drama was too juicy to keep to oneself, it seemed. A wedding day confession to 2 other men? It was the stuff of soap operas, of trashy novels. And I was the pathetic, cuckolded protagonist. On the screen, I saw Amelia, now back on the stage, desperately trying to explain herself to the remaining guests. She and the 2 men were vilifying me, painting me as the insecure, small-minded fool who couldn't take a joke. A sudden thought struck me. I quickly logged into my online banking app. My suspicions were confirmed. There it was, a long list of transactions, hotel room charges, extravagant gifts, expenses I'd been completely unaware of until this moment. Back at the apartment, our apartment, though it no longer felt like mine, I went to Amelia's closet. I opened it slowly, my eyes scanning the meticulously organized rows of designer clothes. The white Burberry shirt and the limited edition Chanel men's tie, the ones I'd seen on Ethan and Noah earlier, were gone. It all clicked into place. Amelia had claimed she hadn't seen her brothers in years. But the truth was, they'd been in constant contact. Last month, she'd spent a small fortune from my account, refusing to tell me what it was for. I'd stumbled upon the expensive men's items in her closet while helping her find a dress, and I'd naively assumed they were a surprise birthday gift for me. My birthday was just around the corner. How incredibly stupid I'd been. Thinking back, even as our lives had become more comfortable, she'd only ever spent money on herself. She'd never even bought me so much as a t-shirt. I was too busy with work. I only realized now. The clothes in my closet have been wearing for years. Looking at the empty spaces where the shirt and tie had been, I felt no sadness, no despair. Instead, I felt a strange sense of closure. The puzzle pieces were finally falling into place. Resolute, I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Dad, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I'm ready to come home. Can I come home and take over the family business? There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then, my father's voice, thick with emotion, broke through. Son, are you serious? Are you really coming back? Yes, Dad, I said, my voice firm. I'm coming home. After hanging up, I lit a cigarette, the smoke curling around my face, blurring the edges of the room. Memories flooded back, unbidden. After graduating from university, I'd refused to go abroad and inherit the family empire. I'd chosen to stay in Shanghai, to be with Amelia. It had caused a massive rift with my family, a bitter argument that had ended with my father disowning me. He was a stubborn man, and I'd inherited his stubbornness. For 5 years, I hadn't seen or spoken to my parents. Driven by a desperate, all-consuming love for Amelia, I'd taken out loans and started an internet company. I had no interest in the tech industry. I'd simply chosen it because it was lucrative. The early days were brutal. I'd struggled, I'd begged, I'd borrowed. I'd almost given up, almost closed the doors, even with the crushing debt. But I loved Amelia. I wanted to give her the best life possible. So I'd worked myself to the bone, pouring every ounce of energy into making the company a success. And it had worked. Slowly, painstakingly, the company had grown. We'd moved from a dingy basement office to a spacious, modern suite. I'd bought a luxury car, paid for in cash. Life was good, or so I'd thought. But as our fortunes had improved, Amelia had changed. I'd been too busy, too focused on work, to notice the subtle shifts in her behavior, the growing distance between us. My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. Amelia walked in, followed by Ethan and Noah. They were carrying bags of groceries, laughing and chatting, oblivious to my presence. Amelia, remember that hot pot place we used to go to in middle school? It must have been 10 years ago. We should go back sometime, Ethan said, his voice full of nostalgia. That hot pot was amazing, Noah agreed. But it's only second best in our hearts. Oh, Amelia asked, playfully. And what's the best? Ethan and Noah spoke in unison, their voices dripping with affection. Your cooking, of course. Amelia giggled, her face flushed with pleasure. It was a revelation. I'd been with Amelia for 8 years, and I'd never known she could cook. I'd asked her about it once, and she'd told me she wasn't interested in cooking, that she was a woman of sophistication, not meant to be confined to a kitchen, that she had me, her free personal chef, to take care of that. But she could cook, and judging by their conversation, she was good at it. They had a shared history, a shared language, that excluded me. The three of them finally noticed me standing there, and their laughter died abruptly. It was awkward, as if I'd interrupted their private moment. Amelia, trying to salvage the situation, turned to me. James, she said, her voice strained. It was all a misunderstanding today. Please don't be angry anymore. Ethan and Noah came here to apologize. We went too far with the joke. We can postpone the wedding, have another ceremony, okay? Before I could respond, Ethan and Noah chimed in, their voices falsely contrite. James, we swear, we're just friends with Amelia. We're really sorry for what happened today. We came here to apologize. You're not going to be so narrow-minded as to refuse our apology, are you? They were manipulating me, trying to make me feel like the bad guy if I didn't forgive them. Seeing my continued silence, Amelia reverted to her usual, imperious tone. Don't be ridiculous, James. I've already given you enough leeway today. Don't push it. Ethan and Noah are being incredibly gracious by coming here to apologize. In the past, her words, spoken on behalf of other men, would have sent me into a spiral of self-doubt and despair. But now, they had no power over me. Ethan and Noah quickly played the role of peacemakers. Amelia, calm down. We need to be understanding of James. You can't compare other men to us. Men as generous as us are rare. I scoffed inwardly. They were already referring to me as other men. I didn't respond. And perhaps it was my imagination, but I thought I saw a flicker of sadness in Amelia's eyes. I stood up, ignoring them, and walked back into the bedroom. Amelia tied on an apron and went into the kitchen. Her 2 brothers followed her, acting as her sous chefs, their movements and interactions subtly, disturbingly intimate. About an hour later, while I was working on my quarterly reports, Amelia interrupted me. Her tone was softer now, almost gentle. Dinner's ready, she said. Come wash your hands and eat. It had been a long time since I'd heard that gentleness in her voice. I nodded, went to the bathroom, washed my hands, and sat down at the table. I realized, with a pang of something that might have been nostalgia, how nice it was to have a hot, home-cooked meal without having to prepare it myself. That is, it would have been nice, if not for the presence of Ethan and Noah. They looked at me with barely concealed amusement. These are all dishes Amelia made herself, Ethan said. She said they're your favorites. Noah added, Oh, right. Amelia said you've never tasted her cooking before. She's really good. You should try it. Their words were polite on the surface, but the underlying message was clear. I was worthless, so insignificant that Amelia had never bothered to cook for me in all our years together. This meal, this one small act of kindness, was only happening because of them. During the meal, the three of them exchanged food, laughed, and talked, their conversation flowing effortlessly. Amelia even surreptitiously fed her brothers with her own chopsticks when she thought I wasn't looking. They had an endless supply of shared memories, inside jokes, a connection that I could never be a part of. I couldn't stomach it. After a few bites, I stood up and headed back to the bedroom. Suddenly, Ethan cried out, "Noah, why did you step on my foot?" Noah, playing the innocent, glanced at me before whispering, "Sure, it wasn't me. Someone stepped on my foot too, several times." Amelia's face turned to stone. She strode over to me, and before I could react, she slapped me, twice, hard, across the face. "James, are you really going to be this petty?" she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "They came here to apologize to you. Is this how you treat guests? Apologize to them right now, or this is over." We'd had arguments before, but we'd never resorted to physical violence. But now, she'd struck me, unprovoked, on behalf of her brothers. I stared at her, my face burning, then turned and walked back to the dining table. I grabbed a bottle of strong liquor, something I hadn't touched all evening, and poured myself a full glass. "I've never done anything underhanded in my life," I said, my voice low and trembling. "The truth is, my father is a wealthy businessman overseas. He's worth billions. And I, for the sake of the woman I loved, chose to break with him, to stay here in Shanghai, to start from scratch." My voice rose in volume. I, a real rich second generation, slept in train stations when I was penniless. Have you ever done that? The three of them stared at me, speechless. "I'm going to drink this," I said, raising the glass. I downed the liquor in one gulp, the fiery liquid burning my throat. Tears welled up in my eyes, spilling down my cheeks. I refilled the glass. In the early days of my company, I worked during the day, trying to build the business. At night, I drove a taxi to pay off my loans. On weekends, I delivered packages. I paused, the weight of my past sacrifices crushing me. Because I'd broken with my family, when Amelia went home for holidays, I was alone, crying in my tiny rented room. I drank again, emptying the glass. This time, my gaze was unwavering, my voice resolute. "I was a fool," I said, my voice laced with self-disgust. "A pathetic, lovesick fool. A rich kid playing at being poor, all for a woman who didn't even care. A heart that could never be warmed." I looked directly at Amelia. "I didn't do it," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I didn't step on anyone's foot, and I wouldn't. It's not in my nature." Then, I turned to Amelia, my voice dropping to a whisper, but filled with a newfound strength. "Amelia, some relationships are just rotten, and it's time to let them go." Amelia froze, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. Without another word, I walked into the bedroom and locked the door behind me. I leaned against the door, tears streaming down my face, tears of grief, of relief, of newfound freedom. Outside, I heard Amelia's voice, rising in a crescendo of anguish. "You two lied. You blamed James. Get out. Get out of my house. You're not welcome here." Exhausted, I slid down the door and fell asleep on the floor. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up with a desperate need to use the bathroom. I unlocked the door and stumbled out, only to be startled by a figure kneeling in the hallway. It was Amelia. She was kneeling in front of my bedroom door, her posture rigid, her eyes fixed on the floor. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice rough with sleep and bewilderment. "Are you crazy?" In the past, the sight of her kneeling there would have filled me with concern, with a desperate urge to comfort her. Now, I felt nothing but a weary annoyance. She slowly rose to her feet, her eyes red and swollen, her face streaked with tears. I stepped around her and went into the bathroom. As I closed the door, I heard her voice, barely a whisper. "James, I'm sorry. I've neglected you for so long. Can you give me another chance?" I stepped out of the bathroom, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. I shook my head slowly. "I've already booked my flight. I'm leaving in a couple of days, going back to take over the family business." My voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. "We're over, Amelia. It's finished." Tears streamed down her face, her carefully applied makeup now a smudged mess. "James, what about all those years we spent together? We struggled through the hard times, and now that you're going to be rich, you're just going to throw me away?" My gaze hardened. "Did I ever let you suffer when we were poor?" I demanded. "Did I ever let you go without?" She bit her lip, her head bowed, unable to meet my eyes. I had to admit, even at our lowest point, when I was working multiple jobs just to keep us afloat, I always made sure Amelia had what she needed, even if it meant sacrificing my own needs. She had no right to accuse me of abandoning her because of money. I looked at her for a long moment, then turned away. What was the point of arguing? It was over. We were over. The accusations of being small-minded had stung, but I knew the truth. I wasn't small-minded. I was simply done. She reached out and grabbed my arm, her touch surprisingly gentle. "Don't you love me anymore?" she whispered. "You promised you'd love me forever." Her voice cracked. "Why aren't you apologizing, begging me to forgive you? You used to get so upset over the smallest things. This time, I brought 2 men home, flirted with them. And you don't even seem to care." I reached for my cigarettes, only to find the pack empty. Frustrated, I crumpled it and tossed it into the nearby trash can. To my surprise, Amelia reached into a drawer in the coffee table and pulled out a full pack of cigarettes. She opened it, took one out, and placed it between my lips. Then, with a practiced flick of her wrist, she lit it with a lighter. The whole sequence was so smooth, so automatic, it stunned me. I'd always been forbidden from smoking in the apartment. Amelia hated the smell, she said. She'd never once mentioned concern for my health, just her own discomfort. I took a deep drag, the nicotine hitting my system with a surprising jolt, momentarily pushing aside the exhaustion. Why should I apologize for something that wasn't my fault? I asked, my voice calm. Her tears flowed faster. But you always used to apologize, no matter what. No matter whose fault it was. That was then, I said, taking another drag, the smoke making my head spin. I stubbed out the half-smoked cigarette on the floor, a small act of defiance, and slowly sank to the floor, my back against the wall. "It's your choice who you want to be with," I continued, my voice weary. "Just like you said, we weren't married. I had no right to control your life." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "It's time we had a real conversation, Amelia. I'm going to transfer the ownership of this apartment and the company to you. You can take that money and live a good life with Ethan or Noah, or whichever one you choose. With that kind of money, they'll treat you well." She shook her head violently, her swollen eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and desperation. "I don't want that. I don't want them. If you're going, I'm going with you. I'll be good to you from now on. I promise." "It's late," I said, ignoring her pleas. "Let's talk about this later. I'm tired." She crawled into the master bedroom and lay down on the bed. I stood at the doorway, watching her heaving chest. She was crying so hard. Maybe in that moment, she felt real regret and sorrow. But my resolve, however, was unwavering. There was no going back. Too exhausted to deal with her, and unwilling to share a bed with her, I went to the guest room and closed the door. It's funny the dialogue that plays out before. It had all happened. The foot stomping, the accusations, the slaps. I replayed it in my mind. "Noah, why did you step on my foot?" Noah, playing the innocent, glanced at me before whispering, "Sure, it wasn't me. Someone stepped on my foot too, several times." Amelia's face turned to stone. She strode over to me, and before I could react, she slapped me, twice, hard, across the face. "James, are you really going to be this petty?" she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "They came here to apologize to you. Is this how you treat guests? Apologize to them right now, or this is over." We'd had arguments before, but we'd never resorted to physical violence. But now, she'd struck me, unprovoked, on behalf of her brothers. I stared at her, my face burning, then turned and walked back to the dining table. I grabbed a bottle of strong liquor, something I hadn't touched all evening, and poured myself a full glass. "I've never done anything underhanded in my life," I said, my voice low and trembling. "The truth is, my father is a wealthy businessman overseas. He's worth billions. And I, for the sake of the woman I loved, chose to break with him, to stay here in Shanghai, to start from scratch." My voice rose in volume. I, a real rich second generation, slept in train stations when I was penniless. Have you ever done that? The three of them stared at me, speechless. "I'm going to drink this," I said, raising the glass. I downed the liquor in one gulp, the fiery liquid burning my throat. Tears welled up in my eyes, spilling down my cheeks. I refilled the glass. In the early days of my company, I worked during the day, trying to build the business. At night, I drove a taxi to pay off my loans. On weekends, I delivered packages. I paused, the weight of my past sacrifices crushing me. Because I'd broken with my family, when Amelia went home for holidays, I was alone, crying in my tiny rented room. I drank again, emptying the glass. This time, my gaze was unwavering, my voice resolute. I was a fool, I said, my voice laced with self-disgust. A pathetic, lovesick fool. A rich kid playing at being poor, all for a woman who didn't even care. A heart that could never be warmed. I looked directly at Amelia. I didn't do it, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I didn't step on anyone's foot, and I wouldn't. It's not in my nature. Then, I turned to Amelia, my voice dropping to a whisper, but filled with a newfound strength. Amelia, some relationships are just rotten, and it's time to let them go. Amelia froze, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. Without another word, I walked into the bedroom and locked the door behind me. I leaned against the door, tears streaming down my face, tears of grief, of relief, of newfound freedom. Outside, I heard Amelia's voice, rising in a crescendo of anguish. You two lied. You blamed James. Get out. Get out of my house. You're not welcome here. Exhausted, I slid down the door and fell asleep on the floor. I thought taking this step would be difficult, but when I really said this, I found myself relaxed. Maybe this is the real relief. Let her go, and save yourself. I used to think that my quarrel and jealousy could prove her position in my heart. I didn't expect that every time I did this, it was counterproductive. I have questioned myself and this relationship more than once. But this is indeed the relationship that I have managed for 8 years. It is really easy to let go. I think no one can be willing to put it on anyone. Before today, my heart was also beating drums. I was afraid that once some things were brought up, she would really agree and compromise. In that way, our 8-year relationship was really overturned, until her performance at the wedding made me completely lose hope for her. It also made me truly appreciate what it means to be exhausted. I'm sure that even if it was difficult to start a business at the beginning, I was not as indecisive as I was in treating this relationship. When her behavior can no longer affect my emotions, I know that it is time to let go. The decision to break up was not my impulse, but the result of my careful consideration. I can afford to love, I can put it down. And I don't think I wasted my youth in this relationship. Perhaps this is also a kind of training for me. I believe that I can become more mature and stable through this matter in my life. Over the next few days, I tried to talk to her about the breakup, but she always avoided it, using various excuses. Finally, one day, she didn't avoid me. She simply told me she had to go out and would face the issue head-on when she returned. So many days have passed. You can wait a few more hours, right? Hearing her say this, I could only nod. That evening, she placed a cake on the table and prepared a full meal of my favorite dishes. She smiled and said, "Happy birthday." The muscles on my face twitched slightly, but I said nothing. She took out a gift box from behind her and handed it to me. "Look, this is a birthday gift I carefully selected for you." I don't know what kind of mood I was in when I took the gift box. It was large, half the size of the table. I was actually a little curious about what was inside. With her encouraging gaze, I finally opened the box. Inside, on top, was a white shirt, below it a suit jacket and pants, and in the corner, a rolled-up blue tie. Seeing the gifts in the box, I was once again in a daze. If she had been so thoughtful in the past and given me such a birthday present, it's no exaggeration to say I would have been happy for 3 days. But now that she gave me the gift, I no longer needed it. I slowly closed the box and casually tossed it aside. Her expression changed, but she quickly put on a smile and placed birthday candles on the cake, then lit them. "Today is your birthday, make a wish. May all your wishes come true from now on." Through the flickering candlelight, I looked directly at her. As the flames danced, her pale face seemed to waver. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a trace of humility in her expression. We locked eyes. I clasped my hands in front of my chest and closed my eyes. When I opened them again, her eyes were filled with tears. "When you were making a wish, I made one too," she said, her voice trembling. "I wish that we would be together forever, always happy." Tears streamed down her cheeks. She sniffled and asked, "What did you wish for?" "Oh, right, you can't say your wish out loud, or it won't come true." I stood up, nodded in response. "Right, so your wish, now that you've said it, won't come true. Good luck in the future," I said, my voice flat. "I have a plane to catch." I didn't touch any of the food on the table. I picked up my pre-packed suitcase and walked out the door. She grabbed my arm from behind, her grip desperate. She was sobbing uncontrollably, like a volcano erupting. "James, I really know I was wrong," she cried. "Can't you forgive me just this once?" I promise I'll be good to you from now on. I'll only have you in my heart. It was all my fault before. I was too willful. I spoke softly. Actually, I am also responsible. Most of your willfulness came from how I treated you. I was so humble in loving you, and to keep you happy I've spent years in the trenches. I am not a small-minded man. I am spineless. She pulled on my arm hysterically. James, please believe one thing. I've always loved you. I replied with a smile. No, you are just used to having me take care of you. At least with me, you don't need to worry about finances. At least, you can be carefree. Or maybe, I revealed my true self as a wealthy heir. She was completely in tears, huddled like an abandoned kitten. The gifts you gave me today, I continued, my voice devoid of emotion, didn't make me happy. They made me sick. Because the things you gave me are the exact same things you gave to Ethan and Noah. You used my money to support 2 other men, and then you humiliated me in front of everyone, at our wedding, making me look like a fool to the entire world. How can I forgive you for that? Amelia opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her eyes were filled with a deep, hollow despair. Seizing the moment when her grip loosened, I pulled free, and without a backward glance, I walked away. There was no hesitation, no lingering doubt. Behind me, I heard Amelia's sobs, filled with sorrow and helplessness. When I boarded the plane to the United States, I realized I felt no attachment whatsoever to the city I'd lived in for over a decade. 6 hours later, I arrived at Los Angeles International Airport. The architecture here was different from China's, a different style. Compared to home, this was a city full of vitality and creativity, and it gathered the most diverse cultures and people in the world, which made me feel full of energy. As soon as I stepped out of the airport, I saw my father. He hadn't seen him in many years. His back seemed to be more bent, and the looming white hair told me that he was much older. This time, we didn't have a big fight like last time. Dad walked towards me with a smile on his face. I let go of the suitcase, stepped forward and hugged him, tears swirling in my eyes. Dad, have you been blaming me all these years? I'm really sorry. I was too disobedient before. Hearing me soften, my father was a little uncomfortable. Because all these years, I have always been very stubborn and rebellious. Dad reached out and patted my back, pretending to be happy. Silly child, no matter what, you are the child of me and your mother. Go home with Dad. Your mother is still waiting for you at home. The moment Dad turned around, I clearly saw 2 crystals slipping from the corner of his eyes. I got into my dad's car, a limited edition Bugatti Chiron, available only in our country. To ease the atmosphere, I joked, "Old man, how old are you? Still playing with this kind of sports car? I have seen this sports car on the internet. It can be nearly 100 million yuan. Say, where did you come from so much private money? Did you use my mom's gold guozi?" My words instantly made my dad laugh. "You stinky boy, you are happy with your dad as soon as you meet. Don't call me old man, old man. I am old. The 72-year. Old man can still have children. Your dad is still young." Between laughter and conversation, Dad started the car. Dad bought a 2-story small foreign building in the United States, which looked very grand. When the car drove home, I saw my mother standing at the door waiting from a distance. Before the car stopped, I jumped out of the car and rushed to my mother. When I came to her, I hugged her tightly. Mom showed a smile on her face. Looking at my mother's smile, I remembered some past events. In fact, my dad had no money when he was young. When he came to the United States to fight alone, he only relied on my mother to bring me. My mother is very difficult. When she was pregnant with me, it happened that my dad committed a crime and entered. She used her weak body to give birth to me alone. Our family was very poor from my birth. In addition to planting more than 10 acres of land, my mother also had to work 3 part-time jobs. She had also worked in a spray paint factory as a spray paint worker. Every time she returned home to spit and sniff her nose, it was always colorful. Because of this work, my mother was in poor health and tonsillitis. Later, it evolved into thyroid surgery, but the family had no money. Mom went to the field to fight pesticides. Because she had not attended school, she didn't understand common sense and hit pesticides against the wind. The whole pesticide was sprayed in her nose. At that time, when my mother was lying on the hospital bed and was about to leave the world, she thought of me, who was 10 years old, waiting for her to support her. Without her, I could not survive. Because of me, she survived with a strong will. Every year, my mother would prepare a new dress for me, meaning to say goodbye to the old and welcome the new. I have never seen my mother wear a new dress in my childhood. She said that she was an adult and she did not wear new ones. I am a child and I must buy new ones for me. When I was 12 years old, the fields in my home were flooded and there was no harvest. I was very sensible and ran over to my mother and said that I didn't want new clothes this year. I knew that our family was very difficult this year. As a result, my mother bought me 2 new clothes when I was 12. I was very puzzled and asked my mother why. Mom said a sentence that I will never forget. "Son, wear clothes on you. Mom has light on her face." I will always remember that day. I secretly vowed in my heart that I must be good to my mother in the future. I must let my mother live a good life. But for the sake of Amelia, I have not been able to be by my mother's side for so many years. At this moment, I am ashamed. I was crying like a child at this moment, holding my mother tightly. "Mom, I'm sorry for your son. I don't deserve to be your son. When I was a child, you were so good to me, but I left you out for so many years." Dad and Mom were also infected by my emotions and cried. After a long time, Dad patted my shoulder. "Don't cry, they are all big guys, and they are still lying in your mother's arms and crying." I helped my mother wipe the tears on her face, and my mother also said, "Son, don't cry. Mom made a table of your favorite. Enter the house to eat." I looked at the backs of my father and mother from behind. They are the real model of love. When Dad had no money, Mom had been helping Dad to take care of the rear, raising a family and taking care of children. When Dad was developed, he did not forget his wife, and he did not become bad like many bosses who had money. The days after returning home made me feel very warm, just like when I was with my mother when I was a child. Before living with Amelia, he had to manage his career and take care of her daily life. Not only is he tired physically, but also mentally. Every day, I have to take care of her emotions carefully, and I turn around day and night. I am really speaking. Maybe I have had enough of that kind of life. After a few days of adjustment, I put down the distractions in my heart and went to work in my dad's company with peace of mind, starting from the bottom. The United States is not as involuted as China, and the intensity of work is not so high. This working atmosphere makes me feel very comfortable. It is much more comfortable than when I was the boss in China. Every day after get off work, I can eat the hot meals made by my mother, and life is simply not too warm. Most of the colleagues who work with me are foreigners, and their personalities are very cheerful. I quickly became one with them. After get off work, I would make an appointment with them to rub strings, sing, or ride horses. The main thing is to be happy. I smiled bitterly in my heart. How much suffering I had suffered for Amelia. Just when life was slowly on the right track, I also completely forgot about Amelia. A former company subordinate sent me a message. 3 days ago, Amelia and Ethan held a wedding. Her other childhood friend Noah was naturally unwilling. The main reason for his reluctance was the over 100 million in assets I'd left to Amelia. Noah disrupted Amelia and Ethan's wedding. The two instantly scuffled, starting with pushing and shoving, but eventually escalating into real violence. Noah pulled out a pre-prepared knife and stabbed out Ethan's eye. Ethan lost the ability to resist, and Noah, caught up in the heat of the moment, couldn't stop himself. He stabbed Ethan again, severing a major artery. Within minutes, Ethan was dead. Witnessing this, Amelia couldn't handle the shock. She went insane and was committed to a mental institution by her family. She would spend the rest of her life there. After the incident, Noah didn't flee. He calmly waited for the police to arrive. Noah was convicted of murder and sentenced to death. Learning all of this, I felt a wave of shishi. It's the state of being emotionally and mentally exhausted, but also carrying with it a sense of profound, complex irony. I had thought that leaving Amelia those assets would be a fair compensation for our time together, but it had led to such a tragic outcome. However, my conscience was clear. I had done everything I could, and more. 6 months later, I started dating an American woman. Although she was Western, she possessed the gentle, virtuous, and understanding qualities of Eastern women. Most importantly, she had me in her heart, and she thought of me in everything she did. Her kindness towards me was much like my kindness towards Amelia. The only difference was that this relationship was a two-way street, and I firmly believe that such a relationship would last. And I firmly believe that tomorrow will be even better. The end.